First, let's get on to the next speaker, and today's afternoon speaker is going to be speaking about industrial branding, the lost art in the industrial marketplace. And I'll give you a quick background on how we decided on bringing Rich Thompson up from Miller Electric. Steve Rourke and I were at the FabTech show, and we went by the Miller Electric booth, and we noticed these boards coming down from the ceiling, a very open-end booth, and it was very creative. The messaging was from automotive, food and beverage, so they had different messaging that came drop down, and it was just really felt like welcoming when you would walk into the booth, and where a lot of booths are closed. A very big show, FabTech is, and 7 digits. They spent a lot of money on this campaign, the booth, but it was very effective. And I said to someone in the booth, I said, who runs this booth and who did the creative on this? And I was directed to Rich Thompson. So Rich, I asked Rich that, spoke to him literally in November and said, we're putting on this Marketing to Engineers event. You seem very creative. This campaign is exactly what marketers should think about doing. And I said, what we really failed to do is do industrial branding very well in our marketplace. And he agreed, and after several conversations, Rich said he would speak at this event. So Rich Thompson currently serves as Vice President of Marketing for ITW Welding North America, where he has a strategic responsibility for key brands such as Miller and Hobart and the company's welding portfolio. Rich has over 25 years of progressive strategic marketing, brand building, product commercialization, and general business management experience on both the B2B and B2C spaces. Before his current role at ITW, he led strategic brand marketing for the Teflon brands for DuPont, as well as in several senior level marketing positions for Newell Rubbermaid at one of the largest divisions. His work in marketing and branding has been recognized by Advertising Age magazine, being named to the prestigious Marketing 100 list, the American Marketing Association with their Gold Edison Award, and by Response magazine for his breakthrough work in changing traditional branding through direct response marketing. A patent inventor, he has commercialized numerous successful new products in marketing and is known for bringing to his employees a common sense and fact-based approach to branding and overall business strategies. How about a welcome response for our friend Rich? And
how are you? Good. Now that everybody's come into the room and sat down, I'm going to ask you to all stand up. Okay. I could see everybody's like kind of in that afternoon slump. Boy, this is going to be good. All right. I want you to remain standing if you thought the seminar you're going to hear today from me was about branding. And if those guys at Miller Electric sit down, I'll kill you. Okay, everybody remain seated. You could sit. I'm about to disappoint you. But that's not what I came here to talk to you about. Actually, what I came here to talk to you about is very personal and has something to do with business. I came here to talk to you about loyalty and money. Loyalty and money. Now, this is not going to be a Gordon Gekko speech from Wall Street. And I'm not going to say anything about greed because this is not about greed. What this is, it's about something that's very personal to all of us. Very personal. Brands. Let me talk to you about brands for a minute. Do you know there was a study done probably no more than about 5 years ago that showed that everybody in this room, on average, touches at least 500 to 600 brands in their lifetime. 500 to 600 brands that you're completely involved with in your life. But there's only 5 or 6 that you are remaining completely and utterly loyal to. Only 5 or 6 out of that 500 to 600 brands. It's an amazing ratio, isn't it? Now, for some help, I'm going to pick on my good friend John Leisner here at Miller Electric. John's seen me do this before in other presentations. John, if you could stand up for a second. John, if you had to give me one brand you are completely and utterly loyal to in your life, what would it be? Captain Morgan.
That's later.
Obviously, I have to speak to John Leisner about his personal brand a little later. But John, for that matter, why are you so loyal to Captain Morgan? Cool guy. What else? Goes good with Coca-Cola. I want you to think for a minute about the brands that you are loyal to right now. Think about it. The ones that you would absolutely drag your fingernails across the table to be pulled away from. And there are brands in your life that you are exactly all about with those brands. Don't kid yourself. There are certain brands that I absolutely love. I love old outboards. I'm big into Evinrude. Evinrude is my absolutely all-time favorite brand. No one could actually, there is a picture on Facebook of me hugging a 300-horse Evinrude at a boat show. Obviously, I have no personal life. But I am so loyal to that brand, I can't even think about or imagine having a black motor hang on the back. No offense to Mercury owners here. Or Yamaha, Tohatsu, or Nissan, or Suzuki, or any of those brands. Listen, I just named, what, 5, 6 brands in that just little diatribe right there. Those are all brands that are always asking for loyalty for. And in the B2B space, there really is no difference. In B2C and B2B, brand is a brand is a brand. Now, if you think for just a second that the brands that you're all involved with and that you all promote through your products or your services, no matter what it might be, the fact of the matter is there are people that are absolutely, completely loyal to your brand. In one of our brands in ITW Welding is Miller. We have literally not just hundreds, but thousands of people that have actually sent pictures of themselves that have tattooed our brand logo on themselves. Now, other than the fact that they need psychological counseling, these people are completely loyal to this brand. There was one gentleman who actually sent me a picture and had our cover of our catalog tattooed on his back. No, that was not me, sorry. But it's true. There are people that actually are so loyal that they will give themselves room for body art for a logo that represents a brand and what it means to them personally. Now, I'm going to show you this next slide here for a second. If it will come up. Recently, last week, I was at Iowa State University talking to their communications school, talking to people who are getting their degrees in advertising, marketing, and business. And there was a seminar I gave about 10 years ago, and I had said this statement to our group that were listening at the time, and I said this to the same group at Iowa State just last Thursday. The business of marketing and brand management is terribly unforgiving of carelessness, incapacity, neglect, or ignorance. That's kind of a harsh statement, but it is 100% true. No matter if you're a marketer, you're an engineer, whether you're an operations person, whether you're in accounting, it makes no difference. Those 4 things, if you ever show any of that while you're trying to market or manage your brand, believe me, they will come and get you and bite you on the behind every single time. What I'm going to ask you today is I'm going to challenge you a little bit. What I'd like you to think about here is I'd like to have you find yourself in a position of handling your brands with a lot of care, not carelessness. Think about fully funding them. Sometimes in other organizations I've worked for, they've thought of this as a cost. Marketing and branding is an investment. I'll show you why. Stewarding your brand each day. I would like to talk to you about the fact that not a single one of us, not one of us that have responsibility for our brands, own the brand individually. We're all stewards of them. And stewardship is a higher level. We hear of stewardship probably in religion more than anything else, but stewardship is a higher calling. And being mindful about what your value chain says about your brand. Don't be so mindful about what you believe about your brand or what you think about it or what you feel about it. It's what your value chain members believe about it. Let's talk a little bit about what it takes to develop and create a brand. And what does it lie in? It lies in understanding underlying issues in your marketplace. That is true of any brand in the B2B or B2C space. Makes no difference if you're Coca-Cola or you're Hewlett-Packard or you're Miller Electric. Makes no difference. This goes back to what I said just earlier about ignorance. Ignorance is a killer, folks. And usually where there's ignorance, we have our own personal beliefs put into those spaces to make us feel better and to make us do things that we should not do with our brands and our business. It's true. Gathering data. Data is very important. Data is very important in the marketing business. I've always talked about the facts. John's heard me say many, many times when people start coming to me with these classic statements, and they start it with, I think, I feel, I believe, I'm more interested in what people know. What do we know? And as engineers, you guys live with data every day. The best marketers out there live with it too. It's not about fluff, folks. It's really about the facts. Developing workable insights. Now, data that don't lead to insights is useless. The data is numbers, it's things, it's facts, it's figures. But the insights, what do you gain from it to develop a strategy, to develop a message, develop communication? If you have that, then you've got something to build on. That talks to you about your future direction. That talks about how you present it meaningfully and profitably. Emphasizing on those two words, meaningful and profitably. The last time I looked at this room, I don't think anybody comes to work to be part of a faith-based organization, right? We're all in business. And these brands mean something to people. They will pay a price for these things. How do you promote that and develop that brand? Market-based facts versus internal beliefs. One of the things I do in every organization when I became a part of it, whether it was at Rubbermaid or at DuPont or ITW, during my first 90 days, what I would do is I would sit and talk to a number of different people with a scripted interview. And I would ask 5 salient questions. And when I would ask those questions, it would always start with one that I would love to ask. And I would say, by the way, where are we with our brand? I mean, what do you know about our brand? And some organizations, depending on who they were, oh, well, XYZ is a strong brand. And they'd stand there like this. And you'd go, oh, it's a strong brand. Well, hey, immediately I'm thinking, well, you must know something about that. Tell me the facts and figures. Where do we have the research? Where is this going to go? And then they go, well, it's strong. Well, how do you know that? Well, because our distributors tell us it is. Our distributors tell us it is? Yeah, and our downstream marketers, and our licensees, and our applicators. Yep. Well, based on what? And then we'll say, well, based on market share, we have 80% market share. Well, let me tell you something. If you get anybody who's telling you you got a strong brand based on market share alone, I have a word of advice for you. Run. Run. Because that's not true. You could still have very strong market share and have a weak brand. And the corollary is true. You can have a strong brand without a particularly strong market share. And there are some that have both. These are all what the internal beliefs are, what drives people to make mistakes. Let me ask you a quick question. Show of hands. How many of you have either seen the movie or read the book Jaws? Wow. Okay, how many have not seen or read the book? Show of hands. Okay, spoiler alert. I'm going to ruin some stuff for you. Or you may even want to go out and see the movie after I'm finished, because I'm going to be using some examples from the film and the book to talk about what happened in it and to talk about it, to kind of illustrate my points during this conversation. Think about this, market-based facts versus internal beliefs. Does everybody remember, for those who have seen or read the book, remember this scene where all the yahoos on the island, on Amity Island, got together and they caught the tiger shark? Everybody's happy. Chief Brody shows up. Mayor Vaughn shows up. And Matt Hooper's sitting there measuring the mouth. Remember that scene? Okay. And then there's that point where everybody's saying, oh, you know, the mayor's going, oh, maybe we could start breathing again. So they think their problems are solved, right? Because they think they have the evidence. Well, Matt's pulling Chief Brody over and say, hey, Martin, come here for a minute. He said, look, there's all sorts kinds of sharks in these waters. There's white tips, makos, blues. And the fact that these bozos caught the white, he goes, oh, come on. He goes, look, it's 100 to 1, 100 to 1. He goes, now look, it's a rare shark for these areas. It's a man-eater, it's very rare. But the fact is that the bite radius in this animal does not match the wounds on the victim. And then you could just feel the whole place collapse. Going, oh no, maybe we don't have it. Maybe based on our own beliefs, we just took a whole bunch of pictures for the paper. That's going to go on every single New England paper and every single one in New York City, so all the vacationers and tourists can come to the island. Well, that was like ringing the dinner bell, right? It was based on their own internal beliefs. Now, in my business, I like to be Matt Hooper. I want to cut the shark open. But there's many people in our business, not particularly at ITW, who are like the mayor. It's like, I'm not going to let you guys watch you cut that thing open and watch that little Kittner boy spill out all over the dock. They don't want to see it. Because it's good for them to believe what they want to believe. That's not how marketing works. Let's start with a definition of brand. Can anybody tell me what they think a brand is before I start? Anybody? Yes? A promise. Whew. Boy, did you see this slide? Man. No, he does not work for Miller Electric. So, let me give you a definition. A brand is a set of differentiating promises that link a product to its customers. That brand assures the customer of a consistent quality plus a superior value. Folks, I want you to take a look at this. Consistent quality refers to the functional, and superior value refers to the emotional, for which the customer is willing to give loyalty to, like I said earlier, and pay a price for, that brings a reasonable return back to the brand, the business, and if you're a public company, the shareholder. Where in that definition did it say anything about our personal beliefs about what we do about our brand every day? Zero. It's not about us. It's about them. It's really about them. And how do they get connected to this brand, whether it's a welder, whether it's a computer, whether it's an industrial crane, whether it's anything in the industrial marketplace that you want to rattle off. The fact of the matter is all these people have a functional and emotional connection to this brand, whatever brand that you're responsible for. It's true, and it's not fluff. Yet brand really only remains one portion of marketing. It's only one portion. It's more importantly, it's known that it's more important to say that it's part of an overall strategic marketing initiative to define this business to an internal and external customer base. Because as much work as you do on your brand for the outside to get people in that part of the value chain to believe and work into their beliefs, you have to live it. You have to live it. And another thing, Brand is far more than a look or a logo. It just happens to be the identity of the brand. Because I hear people using this word almost sacrilegiously. When people throw a logo up on a screen and say, oh, that's the brand. That is not the brand. That is a logo that is representative of the brand. Because there are several other aspects that make up this brand. Taglines are also not positioning statements. Can anybody tell me what Visa's tagline is? Anybody? Everywhere you want to be. But if you were to read their marketing documents, in their positioning statement, you would not find those words anywhere. The actual tagline was born of the positioning statement. That's done because of the upfront work. It's how Visa, in their case, it's how they move forward and structured your actions for your customers. It's how you behave. It's how you behave. Because in so many times, a lot of people forget that brand is culture and culture is brand. It's also very pervasive, and it should be persuasive. If it's not pervasive in your organization, maybe you should look at yourself today and try to figure out maybe you should be the ones that start it. Because it's something you all have to live. In environments where there's a lot of business units, and John will attest to it too at the same time, if you find yourself in a position to where you're trying to maybe move it a little differently than this other one moves, and you're all responsible, and you're all under the same brand umbrella, you're creating cracks and fissures in your brand. Because even if it's doing something you believe personally for you and your career, you're really only doing something in the short term for yourself. You're not doing it long term for the longevity of your brand. Difference for difference sakes does not create differentiation. Let's talk about a gap that most good marketers will look at, and I would encourage you to think about this. I put in a very, very simple statement. This gap that you need to look at if you're looking at a strategic model for where your brand needs to be, it starts here. It's what your customer and your future customers believe and perceive about your brand or brands, for that matter, and where you'd like that perception to actually be. Now, this is a pretty wide gap between these two, and there's a big reason for that, because this represents the definition work you have to do. And I'm going to tell you, this is not fun. It's not. A lot of people think the fun really kind of comes into this part. I had a guy call me who was asking for advice from another business that's unrelated to ours. And he was I believe the CFO. He called me the other day. And he said, we're going to be merging these two brands together, Rich, and then we're going to create a brand new brand. He goes, I'm going to send you all the artwork that we possibly can to have you look at it and see what you think. I'm like, well, what kind of work is being done to figure out that you really need to do this? And he goes, I don't know, but he goes, this whole branding and logo thing is kind of fun. I'm like, I could just feel myself kind of like starting to stroke out just for a second. And I'm like, oh, yes, it is fun. I agree. It really is. Dealing with all these things with the outputs, logo development, design, rollout, signs, working with agencies. Yeah, it's a blast. It's fun. And an agency, that's probably not worth their salt will take their money from you gladly for whatever direction you've given them, because it gives them the creative playground to do whatever it can and bill you. The fact is that you're not walking in with some insights about what you need to do and the strategy to address the insights. It's just fun work. The hard work is defining the gap, folks. It's measuring your audience through research. It's developing a fact-based, workable, lasting direction to present your brand and message. It's where the hard work comes in. It's not fun, but it's critical. It's absolutely critical. And I've seen so many people get hung up in that fun part, and they go, and sometimes they have some success with it, and then they keep going. I said, well, that worked well, and they keep going, and then they do another one, and they go, what happened? What happened? I mean, you're doing so good on those last two. Well, did you ever think you got lucky? You might have. And then sometimes that breeds a little contempt for the process. Engineers are extremely good at process. If you find yourself in a marketing position and your background's in engineering, you know what? You got a lot of the brain power to pull this off. Think about the structure. Define the gap. Brand. It's the entire experience that people have with your business products and services, folks. It's external and internal. It's both. You have to have both. Because whatever message you send out to the marketplace about your brand, that first time that person has a problem with your product or service and they call on a customer service and they start acting like a real nudge to you on the phone, guess what? You just lied. You lied. And today, trust is so much part of a brand. Young and Rubicam just recently did a study over the last 15 years. And in North America alone, in 1997, the one question that was asked of all different kinds of consumers, industrial and otherwise, they were asked this one question. How much trust do you put into your brands that you currently own or would like to buy today? Only 49% of North Americans said that they trust their brands. In 2012, the number was 19%. 19%. Trust is everything. Why do you think the trust probably faded during that time? Look what happened in 2008 and 2009 to one of our most trusted institutions, banks. What did they do? Tanked. Anybody remember a brand called Lehman Brothers? Anybody want to remember that? There's a lot of people who don't, because now they don't trust them. And now they're not around. Billions and billions of dollars sitting in that organization. All those jobs lost, all that money lost, and all the money that we had to make up as taxpayers for it. Political ads don't do us any good either. Always one bashing another, no matter what the party is. How can you trust anybody? Well, trust is essential and part of a brand. It relates to your culture. It does relate to your culture. Brand is culture, culture is brand. How do you do that? The best, lasting, sustainable brand differentiation begins with definition. It begins with definition. When I say Apple, show of hands, how many people own an Apple? Keep them up. How many people would never give up their Apple? Wow. That's a big number. Now, I'd imagine maybe 3 years ago, there'd probably be a lot more hands remaining up. In the intelligent and technology space, especially in brands, people are more willing to move to another brand, and it's known by research. They're more willing to move to another brand, no matter how innovative the brand is, if they feel as if the next other brand will give them a competitive edge over another one. So if you're in a technology-minded space, I want you to think of this ad. Remember this ad maybe about 6 or 8 months ago? It was for the Samsung Galaxy. The agency who did the research on this were smart because they read the insights and they did something about it. It was basically a shot of a line of people waiting outside of the store waiting for the next iPhone. Okay? It wasn't the iPhone 10 like Britt was talking about. That'll be another ad. But think about this. They had everybody in line. They had 2 guys stand there. They came up and started talking to one another. They had Samsung Galaxies. And as they're talking, they casually put the back of the phone to each other. And you hear this tink. And the girl's like, whoa, wait a minute. What did you just do? Oh, we just exchanged playlists. Hey, we'll talk to you later. They're gone. And all the people in the Apple line, the cameras focus at them. They go, they're looking down the ground. She goes, when do you think our next version will do that tink thingy? They knew that people with those kind of brands will make that switch. And they were trying to get a message out to you and say, we understand you. And whether you own an iPhone or not, come to us. Because we're going to give you an experience around this brand that you will never forget. What is the best-selling phone in the world? The Samsung Galaxy. Yet we talk about the iPhone a lot. But the fact of the matter is, it's still not the #1 brand. It's a strong brand, very strong, but they have more market share. Remember what I said earlier about that? Those facts are true. When you're thinking about branding, it's not like archery, where you have a wide target and you get to shoot at all the colors and hopefully get close to the center. You have one shot to get this right. One. Because if you screw it up, you'll pay more in the end to fix it than you will anything else. Because if you present it wrong, you message it wrong, or you transfer an equity from one brand to another that you think had no equity, or a brand that probably had a lot of equity, but you didn't have the money to test it, and then you switched it to another name because it felt good, that's where you make mistakes. That's where you lose customers. That's where you lose loyal customers. And if you don't know the functions of how to do that, you could put your business in trouble. So think about how you do that one shot. It's really not that 6 to 12 week program where we could do something fun, and then we can get logos done, and then we could do some brand programs, and everybody talks to the agency, and everybody's all hunky-dory. Oh, this is so much fun. Just like the phone call I had a few weeks ago. It's not that. I always put this warning up here, and I did it for the students at Iowa State. Some companies have gone that route, and when they get there, that fun lasted just for a little while. Then reality sets in. When they start looking at the numbers 1, 2, 3 years out, and they start wondering, why am I losing share? Why are people not listening to me? Why are the salespeople not getting an answer to their phone call? Why are they? Do you see what I mean? You start thinking, it's like, well, maybe this brand stuff's really important after all. And it is. Brands always sit at the core essence of who you are. They talk about who you want to say for a long and consistent and sustained period of time. That's why it's so important to get that right on the first shot. Let me show you a little bit of what brands are built on. And I've kind of digested this into 4 areas. And I'll give you another example. Relevance. Without getting into all the detail about this, relevance is whether you need this brand or product or not. It's whether you need it or not. The most important one, which I'll get back to later, is differentiation. Esteem. Esteem really gets down to whether you like a brand or not. And your last one is knowledge. It's whether you know a brand or not. In this, these 2 talk about the stature of a brand. That talks about your current operating value of where you are in your brand today. Those are the top 2, relevance and differentiation. They talk about your strength as a brand. And that's critical because those are the 2 elements, and the most important element of it is differentiation. It's whether you have reasons to choose a brand or not. We all own automobiles here today, right? We all need tires at some time, and we have reason to choose you. They may spend some time talking about the features and benefits, but they want to talk to you about the reason. It's the reason. All of this is foundational. With everybody who is taught today, they've talked about different aspects around marketing. And what I'm talking to you today is the foundational piece that sets everything of what they've talked about, what Rebecca will talk about later, into motion. Because if you don't have this, you have a series of messages going out there that sound good, feel good, but are probably not on target. I'll give you another example here. Using the JAWS model. When you think of brands, you think of certain things that are associated with certain words. We all do as human beings. Now, if you remember, the first girl got killed on the beach. And then Chief Brody is trying to explain to the medical examiner what's going on. He gets told it's a shark attack. He sits on the ferry back and forth. The mayor grabs him, and he said, look, you can't close the beaches. You're going to need an order by the Board of Selectmen, everything else. And he turns around, he pulls him aside. He goes, look, Larry, I was just reacting to what I was told. And he goes, look, Martin, it's all psychological. When you say barracuda, everybody says, huh, what? You yell shark. You got a panic on your hands on the 4th of July. Now, the personal brand for a shark was a lot stronger than a barracuda, right? Because if you're sitting on a beach, it's already, barracuda! Huh? What? You go, shark, what's the reaction? Probably one of the best marketing a fish could ever do. Just one word. But he does it right. Because he gets the reaction that he all wants. Everybody out of the water now. What a brand is not. And I'm going to be silent about this as I start going through this list. And you guys can chuckle as I put them down. This one I always get the biggest chuckle with kids when I show them this. They go, oh, yeah, you know that Paula Dean lady? Boy, she really screwed up when she started talking about her staff members, didn't she? All know who Paula Dean is? Talk about a personal brand that went south, huh? I used to work in a business where you always had a lot of celebrity chefs involved in your business. These people are people too. Branding is personal. Remember what I said at the beginning? It is personal. And some even go as far as the person. Paula Dean, Rachel Ray, Bobby Flay. Those are just in the cookware industry. I can name off a lot of other ones in different industries. Take a look at some of these. A project name. How many of you are guilty of making a brand a project, or project name a brand? Raise them up. Come on. I've seen this more times than not. They said, well, you know, yeah, we'll just name the product this. It's like, well, where did that come from? What was the project name that we had? And what kind of study did you do to figure out that that name is actually going to be relevant to the end user? Well, we have some VOC. Really? Okay, what was the VOC said? Well, we went down the street and talked to the distributor. You talked to one distributor. Yeah. Who are they? My dad's mother-in-law. Like, great. Perfect. Not the answer you want. A shape and a sound. I had one person come into my office one time years ago saying, you know, that branding thing that Intel does really great. Like, what do you mean? And he kind of sat there, he goes, you know, that bung, 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 bung. I'm like, what do you think that was? He goes, that's the brand. It's not a brand. It's a musical alliteration. It's something that we do think of to keep ourselves in mind. Smart marketers will do that. Smart advertisers will do that. But it's not the brand. It is not a position, and it's not a jingle. And it is not a product. The products are the part of the portfolio that sits in the brand portfolio. It's not that. There are times where a product has become a brand because they've become transformational. Kleenex is a great example of that. I once had to go to my friend's house who works for P&G. She works for the Puffs facial tissues brand. And I made the mistake of, hey, Steph, do you have any Kleenex? Oh. Ow. Well, I tell you, I couldn't sit down for a week. Teflon is one of those products that were transformational, to where the lexicon of the name of the brand becomes part of our language. I can tell you while I worked at DuPont, we were chasing magazines and newspapers all the time that would say, oh, well, we just talked to Bill Clinton, the Teflon president. Oh, God. Or John Gotti, the Teflon Don. Not the people I want associated with the brand. Not at all. And most importantly, if it's a liability, you're in trouble. And it's certainly not a cost. A brand is an asset. A brand is an asset. It's an asset that requires investment. Investment. How do brands help us? I put down 6 things that I'd like you to keep in mind. It is a key driver in intangible value. The prime driver of profitable loyalty. Not just loyalty itself, profitable loyalty. That's why brands like Apple, for an MP3 player they call the iPod, they can ask for a lot more than anybody else with an MP3 player. And by the way, Apple was not first with an MP3 player, if you didn't know. A lot of people think that they invented the category. They didn't. They just made it smarter and sexier than anybody else could. Pricing power. If your brand is strong enough, just like Apple, you can ask for a premium for your brand and your product associated with it more than anybody else. It creates communities. We've heard a little bit about social today. We'll hear a little bit more about that again. In my business in welding, word of mouth and recommend to a friend are the 2 drivers amongst welders. Now, you wouldn't think so because most of the time, welders, you'd think of these guys with a lot of sparks and arcs and a helmet that's gone down all the time. Well, guess what? A lot of these guys want to take the helmet off and talk because they don't talk all day. They love to talk. And you'd probably find a lot in your businesses, you have people who love to talk too. You just have to find out how they want to talk, how they want to have conversations, how they want to engage you, how they expect you to engage them. Extendability and elasticity. In the consumer world, it's been done many times before. Dove. Remember, everybody remembers Dove soap? Quarter cup of moisturizing cream? Well, where is it now? Where do you see it advertised? It's not just soap anymore, folks. It's body wash. It's men's facial and hair care. They found ways of taking the brand and extending that into categories where it made sense for people to follow them and remain loyal. Because if they found out they would follow them but wouldn't remain loyal, P&G wouldn't be in that business. It's a key in creating profitable and successful portfolio for yourself, no matter how many brands you have. There are 2 triangles that I work with, and actually John's seen them in our business because I've got them hanging in different offices. I used these about 10, 12 years ago. Some people call them Thompsons Triangles. I just call them triangles. But I want to show you something, and especially for our engineering audience today, this is important. When you're thinking about your brand and how people associate to it, you start with your foundational part is attributes. Everybody usually starts with attributes. That's functional. Those are features or processes that must be provided. You have to have them. Unfortunately, this and this next category, benefits, these are the easiest to deliver, and they're the least meaningful. And they're also the most easily imitated and the least interesting. A lot of you guys out there might be saying, oh, wait a minute, whoa, 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 we have patents, we have patents. I understand that. There's a lot of businesses that are out of businesses that went down the ship with hundreds of patents in their portfolio. And the reason being is that other competitors found a way to get around it. They found a better way to message it. It was more meaningful. This benefits part, guys, refers to the functionality provided to those customers. That's the head part. That's the head part. These 2 are important, but without this last one, you're only talking about the what and the how. This last one is more about the why. These are beliefs and values. These are what some people accuse marketers of saying, this is fluff. Well, I can tell you right now, this is serious stuff. Think of all those brands that you'd like to name as the brands everybody likes to name, like Google, Apple, Nike, Disney, all those. Well, guess what, folks? They live those every day, and that's what they work on. And they keep a good eye on that top part of the triangle. These are beliefs and values. This is the heart. This is the most meaningful and most difficult to imitate, but the hardest to deliver. The hardest. It's not easy. It goes back to figuring out what your gap is. Try to figure out what that gap is, because that'll get you to that. There are 5 principles of brand positioning. Value. This is the perceived benefits that the customers value. Or even your customer, whatever customer it is, what part of the value chain you're talking about. It could be your distributors, could be your applicators, it could be your consumers and end users. Uniqueness also comes with IP. Go with your competitors or not. That just doesn't include your products and services, folks. It includes your messaging. It includes your messaging. Credibility. Who are you and are you credible? And we heard today about the word consistency. Be consistent. The only way you could stay credible is by being consistent. Remember what I said about trust and about how that's fallen over the last 15 years? Well, there's a lot of inconsistency in the messages today, folks, no matter if it's from politics, religion, brands, businesses, whatever. The ones that stay consistent are the ones who win. They get the most eartime. Sustainability, what you have to own for 3 to 5 years. It's not this kind of revolving door process. Don't be so quick to go out and try to reinvent your wheel every single time because it feels good. If you've got a message that you know that works with your audience, stick with it. Find ways of developing that so you can move with that and move where they're going, but still remain true to your core message and meaning. And fit. How do you leverage your strengths, your current offerings and desires for all of this? Because you have to find a way to do it. Let me talk to you a moment about credibility. I started out talking a little bit about loyalty and about trust. I'll use another Jaws example for you today. This is not about the lines in the movie, but this is about an interview that I had seen with Peter Benchley, the author of Jaws. And Benchley was asked this one question. Now, as an author, as a writer, as a creator of the story, he had a lot invested in this, and he was asked to write the original screenplay for this film. So what had happened is that we found out that the screenplay kept getting a little different, and it actually varied fairly much from the original book. Now, Benchley was asked this question, and he said, where did you have the most rub with Steven Spielberg on this? And he goes, actually, it wasn't so much in the whole story, but my problem was with the ending of the movie. Now, in the book, what happens is that Benchley's character, Quint, after the shark jumps in the boat, is drugged down in the water once his foot gets caught in a rope, and he's pulled behind the shark. The orca sinks, Brody's sitting on a cushion, and the shark is coming toward him. Now you think, oh, well, that sounds a lot different than the ending of the movie. It is. And what happens is that the shark is pulled by the weight of Quint and drowns under its own weight and spins slowly to the bottom. Now what had happened is that Spielberg pulled Benchley aside, and they were ready to film this and said, look, Peter, the ending of your book is a downer. He goes, I can't do this. And then he goes, here's what I propose to do. So Spielberg starts to tell him the story of what he's going to do, and Benchley recounts, he stood there, he goes, Stephen, this is preposterous. A shark does not bite down on a scuba tank and explode like an oil refinery. And Spielberg looked at him and he said, I don't care. I have got these people in my hands for the last 2 hours, and they have believed everything I've done up to this point based on your facts. And whatever I do in the last 5 minutes, I want them up on their feet, off their chairs, sitting there going, yes, 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 this is what should happen to this animal. Benchley argued with him, and Spielberg threw him off the set. He wasn't allowed there for the rest of the film. Now, Spielberg got his ending. For those of you who have seen the movie, you know how it ends. It's one of the best endings in cinema. Now, Benchley was asked, and he goes, well, let me ask you this. He said, what was it like when you sat down and watched the premiere? He goes, when I saw the premiere, he goes, I realized that I was wrong. Stephen was right. He goes, I kept thinking of what the great screenwriter William Goldman once said. He said, the truth is great and facts are fine, but nothing holds a candle to believability. He goes, the fact is, he goes, even though I try to write a very factual ending, he goes, Stephen came up with an ending what people wanted. It's because he said Stephen understood what his audience wanted. It's not what I thought was true. It was based on Benchley's internal beliefs, his internal facts, not what Spielberg understood what we all wanted. It's for that shark to go up like an oil refinery. Sorry I ruined the movie for the rest of you guys. But think about that. We're in the business of creating beliefs in the end user, the customer. We're not in the business of taking our own internal beliefs and then trying to find some way to message that. It's understanding them first and then messaging to them. It's what they want to know, what they want to feel, what they want to believe, not us. Stewardship and discipline around brands. Anybody who's worked for me over the last 20 years knows that these two words are usually the two words that are basically, I would say, the price of admission to any of my marketing teams. We have people here from Miller Electric who do that every day, and hats off to them. The fact of the matter is we do not own these brands. We are stewards. Stewardship is a higher calling. We're here to take care of them, do the right thing by them, have people enjoy these brands, be loyal to them. And while the businesses are able to make a reasonable return on that loyalty. Discipline. We talked a little bit about discipline today in some of the other seminars. Discipline is absolutely critical to make sure that you're doing absolutely the right thing all the time. Not just something a little different from this person so I can get more light on me. It's not about that. That creates those little cracks, those little fissures in the brand that you will pay for dearly if you don't do it right. No matter how large your organization, whether it's 10 people or 1,500, all of you have a responsibility to that. It's essential to a brand's success. You have to live it. You have to live it. One more thing before I go. I've often said this, and people have heard me and my organization say this many a time. Brands always lose their way when they lose their why. They always lose their way when they lose their why. If we're more in the business of talking about the what and the how, we have competitors out there every day that talk about the what and the how every day, no matter what our business is. Sure, they make money, sure, they gain market share, but it's the why that makes the difference. Now, we talked about John's personal brand with Captain Morgan earlier. Obviously, we have to have more discussion about that. But think about people's personal brands, people we put in positions of trust. Remember what I said about trust and loyalty? We put them in those positions every day. How many remember the big scandal with General David Petraeus? One of the best known, best trusted, best loyal, 5-star generals we could ever have. But he lost his way when he decided to have a dalliance with the person writing his biography. No one ever talks about the guy anymore because he lost his why. How about Bill Clinton, the Teflon president? Think about that. Does everybody remember that? Remember this? I did not have relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. Remember that? He lied. He lied. He lied to all of us. And what did it get him? Impeachment. But what's his nickname? What did we name him? Slick Willie, right? That wasn't the media's name, that was our name. And think about brands that we do like and trust every day. Somebody mentioned Target in one of the seminars here earlier today. What's the nickname for Target? Target. Why? We did that. Because it's cheap chic. Because we know that we can buy toothpaste and toilet paper there and still get the best designer clothing ever every quarter from a different designer. That's why we say it's Target. They created the impetus for us to believe that. That's what smart marketers do. They look for that. So, other than working on your personal brand if you have a certain alcohol that you like to drink, I'd encourage you all to go back and think about how you're going to be able to live the stewardship and discipline thought process. It's not how you think about it, it's how you live it. Thank you.